Hey everyone, ready for some seriously cool science?
Always.
Okay, so today we're diving into a breakthrough that could, like, totally change how we think about energy.
Ooh, I love those.
Yeah, right. Artificial leaves.
Okay.
So just like, the leaves on trees.
Yeah.
But get this one's made in a lab.
Wow.
And it can turn CO2, like that greenhouse gas, into fuel.
Seriously. That's pretty amazing. It's definitely attracting a lot of attention.
From, like, everyone, right?
Yeah, scientists, engineers, you name it.
Okay, so how does it even work? Like, does it actually even look like a leaf?
Well, not really. I mean, it doesn't have like veins or chlorophyll or anything.
Okay.
But it does kind of take inspiration from how, photosynthesis works.
Right.
So like the first step is capturing sunlight.
Okay.
And for that they use this really cool material.
It's like what?
It's called a perovskite solar cell.
Perovskite.
Yeah, and they're like super efficient at absorbing sunlight.
So, like a superpowered solar panel.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the sunlight. Now what? Like, how do we get from sunlight to, actual fuel?
Right, well, that's where things get really interesting. So besides capturing the sunlight, the artificial leaf also has to, like, make these chemical reactions happen to, actually transform the CO2 and water into the hydrocarbons.
Right.
And for that, they use these tiny, like, nanoscale structures.
Okay.
Called copper nanoflowers.
Copper nanoflowers.
Yeah.
I'm picturing, like, a tiny, I don't know, bouquet of metal flowers.
Well, I mean, not exactly flowers, but
Right.
but they are super effective catalysts.
Okay, so that means, like, they help speed up the reaction.
Exactly, yeah. Speed up those chemical reactions that are needed to actually create the hydrocarbons.
Okay, so the perovskite captures the sunlight. The copper nanoflowers do their chemistry magic.
Right.
And boom, we've got fuel.
Yeah, basically. Although, I mean, it's a bit more nuanced than that, but
Yeah.
you got the basic idea. And what's really cool is that unlike some earlier versions, this one can actually make those more complex hydrocarbons.
Not just like the single carbon ones.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're talking ethane, ethylene.
Okay.
Those are the building blocks for like fuels, plastics, all kinds of things.
Wait, so we could be making plastic from sunlight and CO2?
Potentially.
That's insane.
It is pretty incredible. And it gets even better.
What? There's more?
Yeah. So they found that if they add glycerol, it actually makes the whole process even more efficient.
Glycerol, like that's a byproduct of like soap making and stuff.
Right, yeah. A lot of times it's just considered waste.
Wow.
But here it acts as what we call an electron donor.
Okay.
So it basically supercharges the reactions, makes them like 200 times more effective.
200 times?
Yeah.
That's wild. So not only are we, creating these valuable materials, but we're also using something that would usually just be thrown away.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a win-win.
Totally. So we're talking fuel, plastics, and what else?
Well, the process also creates other byproducts, which are actually valuable too. Like they're used in pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, things like that.
So we're talking fuel, plastics, medicine, even beauty products, all from like sunlight and CO2.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Like turning pollution into like a treasure chest of useful stuff.
It really is a great example of how, scientific innovation can lead to these more sustainable solutions for all kinds of industries.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. This is huge. But I got to ask, like, how efficient is this whole process really? Like, is it ready for, prime time, or are we still in the early stages?
Right, and that's where things get a little more complicated.
All right, so you were saying before that things get a little more complicated when it comes to like the efficiency.
Yeah, well, the whole concept is really elegant.
Right.
But there are still some challenges.
Like what?
Well, like one of the key ones is something called CO2 to hydrocarbon selectivity.
CO2 to what?
Hydrocarbon selectivity.
Okay, break that down for me. Like, what does selectivity even mean here?
So basically, it's how effectively the artificial leaf converts that captured CO2 into those desired hydrocarbons.
Right, like the ethane and ethylene?
Exactly, yeah, those ones we talked about.
Right.
And right now, that selectivity rate is only about 10%.
So, like, only 10% of the CO2 is actually being turned into, the good stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so there's definitely some room for improvement there.
Definitely.
So what would it take to, like, boost that selectivity? Like make the process even better?
Well, that's what a lot of the research is focused on right now. Like, scientists are experimenting with different catalyst designs.
Okay.
Like tweaking those copper nanoflowers,
Wow.
trying to, fine-tune their structure so that they can, guide those chemical reactions even better.
So it's kind of like fine-tuning a recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
But instead of like flavor, we're trying to get like the perfect fuel.
Yeah, exactly. And just like a chef might experiment with different ingredients, researchers are, trying all sorts of ways to make the artificial leaf work even better.
Okay, so it's all about optimization.
Exactly, yeah. And one thing that's really exciting is the potential for customization.
Customization? Like, what do you mean?
So by changing the surface of the catalyst, they can actually like tailor the types of hydrocarbons that are produced.
Really?
Yeah. So like imagine, being able to create biocompatible plastics specifically for like medical implants.
Wow.
Or specialized fuels for different types of vehicles.
And all from the same like basic process.
Yeah, potentially.
That's wild. It's like having this tiny little factory that can be programmed to make exactly what we need.
Exactly, yeah. And that opens up so many possibilities, not just for, energy, but for like tons of industries.
Okay, so now like I'm really starting to see, the potential here, but let's zoom out for a second.
Okay.
Like if this technology actually, takes off.
Yeah.
What kind of impact could this have on the world?
Well, I mean, the implications are huge. Like, imagine, a world where we can make fuel locally.
Okay.
Using, just sunlight and CO2.
Right.
We could, like, seriously reduce our reliance on fossil fuels.
Right.
Which would, change everything, our supply chains, maybe even geopolitics, everything.
So the whole energy landscape could be totally different. And wouldn't that be like massive for climate change?
Oh, absolutely. Like if we can make fuels and materials in this carbon neutral way, it would be a huge step in, fighting climate change.
Okay.
And moving towards a more sustainable future.
And we've talked a lot about fuel, but you mentioned other applications too.
Yeah.
Like what else could we use these artificial leaves for?
Well, think about like manufacturing.
Okay.
A lot of industrial processes use, tons of fossil fuels and create a lot of emissions. But with artificial leaves, we could like create this closed loop system where factories actually capture their own CO2 and then use that to make what they need.
So factories could like power themselves.
Yeah, potentially. Using just sunlight and their own waste.
That sounds, almost too good to be true.
It's definitely a really compelling vision. And of course, there are still challenges.
Right.
But the potential is definitely there. And it's not just factories either. Like we could use this to make sustainable plastics.
Okay.
Reduce our reliance on all that petroleum-based stuff.
Right.
Which would be huge for the environment. We could even like develop systems that actually pull CO2 out of the air. Yeah, like cleaning the air we breathe.
Wow. So we're talking about like a total revolution in how we produce energy, how we consume it, and so much more.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure there are, some downsides too, right? Like challenges we need to think about.
Of course, yeah. There's no such thing as a perfect solution.
Right. Okay, so no perfect solution. What kind of like downsides or challenges are we talking about here?
Well, one thing is, like the energy it takes to actually make these leaves.
Okay.
On a large scale.
Right.
We got to make sure that like making them doesn't create more emissions than it saves.
Right. Totally. We don't want to solve one problem and then like create another one.
Right.
What about like the actual materials used in the leaves? Anything to think about there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like some of the stuff in those perovskite solar cells can be toxic. So, we got to be careful about how we like handle them and dispose of them. And we need to keep looking for ways to make the whole thing even more eco-friendly.
So it's not just about like the final product. It's the whole like life cycle.
Exactly, yeah. Got to think about like everything from production to disposal.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So we've talked about the environmental side of things. What about like social or economic impacts?
Right. Well, one of the biggest ones could be on jobs,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
like if we start making fuel and all this stuff in a totally new way,
Right.
it could really shake things up.
Yeah.
Like whole industries could change.
Right.
So we got to figure out how to, make that transition, make sure people aren't left behind.
It's like with any big tech change, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be like winners and losers.
Right.
And we got to make sure like everyone benefits.
Exactly. Like we need, good policies, support systems, all that, so people can adapt.
Okay, so we've talked about the good, the bad, the environmental, the social stuff. A lot to consider. What's next for this technology? Like, what are the next steps?
Well, right now it's mostly still in the lab, right?
Yeah.
So the big challenge is scaling up. Like, how do we make these things cheaply?
Okay.
On a massive scale.
Right.
That's not easy.
No, definitely not.
It's going to take, like, everyone working together, scientists, engineers, manufacturers.
Okay.
And of course, we need to keep investing in research,
Yeah,
keep the momentum going.
So it sounds like a lot of work ahead.
Yeah.
But also like incredible potential.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if we can figure this out,
Yeah.
it could really change the world.
It really could. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing to think about. And it's like a good reminder that science is always pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, we got to approach these breakthroughs, with excitement.
Yeah.
But also, like, be smart about it. Think about all the angles.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a reminder that we can create a better future,
Right.
but it takes work. We need to, work together, be innovative, and be open to new ideas.
Totally. Well, on that note of optimism and possibility, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating world of artificial leaves. And as this technology keeps developing, we'll keep you updated.